In a significant move aimed at reinforcing China's global economic ties, President Xi Jinping is reportedly seeking to host a meeting with over 20 prominent international business leaders later this month. This initiative coincides with the upcoming China Development Forum (CDF), a key event in Beijing that gathers top executives from various global corporations. The meeting, which is tentatively scheduled for March 28, is seen as a strategic effort by Beijing to stabilize foreign investment flows, which have been declining amid ongoing economic challenges. According to sources familiar with the discussions, invitations have been extended to notable CEOs including Ken Griffin of Citadel, George Elhedery of HSBC, and Stephen Schwarzman of Blackstone, among others. The CDF is set to take place on March 23 and 24, and approximately 72 global executives are expected to attend. However, the allure of a direct meeting with Xi has prompted some executives to reconsider their attendance at the CDF in favor of the private gathering with the Chinese leader. Beijing's urgency in organizing this meeting can be attributed to several factors. The country is grappling with a prolonged property sector crisis, waning consumer confidence, and a competitive domestic market that has made it increasingly challenging for foreign companies to thrive. International firms have expressed concerns over barriers to market access, persistent deflation, and the growing pressure from local competitors. These factors are compelling the Chinese government to seek the support of global business leaders who have made significant investments in the country. Compounding these challenges is the backdrop of rising tensions in U.S.-China relations. Under President Donald Trump, the United States has escalated trade hostilities, imposing tariffs that have adversely affected Chinese exports. In retaliation, China recently introduced countermeasures targeting American agricultural products, further straining economic ties. In this context, the potential meeting with CEOs is critical for Xi as he aims to reassure international investors of China's commitment to reform and openness. Historically, Xi has utilized such gatherings to convey messages of support for foreign investment. Last year, he hosted a similar meeting with U.S. business leaders, emphasizing China's dedication to economic reforms. This year's gathering is expected to feature a more diverse group of executives from various countries, reflecting China's desire to broaden its economic partnerships beyond traditional allies. As the meeting approaches, anticipations are high regarding the outcomes of these discussions. The Chinese government has not publicly confirmed the meeting, with a spokesperson stating they had no information regarding a gathering with CEOs. However, the diplomatic overtures suggest a willingness to engage with global business leaders in an effort to bolster economic ties and affirm China's role in the global market. Looking ahead, the developments from this potential meeting could have significant implications for foreign investment in China. Should the discussions yield positive outcomes, it may signal a renewed commitment from Beijing to create a more conducive environment for international businesses, potentially alleviating some of the concerns currently hindering foreign investments. As the global economy continues to navigate uncertainties, the world will be watching closely to see how China's leadership addresses these challenges and seeks to foster stronger international partnerships. This week, Beijing wrapped up its annual 2 sessions. A significant political event that includes the plenary meetings of the National People's Congress (NPC) and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference (CPPCC). While these gatherings are designed to project an image of a participatory political process under the guise of whole process people's democracy, they are often characterized by elaborate pageantry that ultimately serves to reinforce the authority of the Chinese Communist Party (CCP) and its leadership, particularly President Xi Jinping. This year's sessions highlighted 5 key signals that reveal the party's current priorities and challenges. At the forefront is Xi Jinping, who appears to be consolidating his power even further. Throughout the NPC, various government agencies attributed successes primarily to Xi's leadership, while challenges were largely blamed on external factors, particularly the actions of the United States. The National Development and Reform Commission, for instance, emphasized Xi's pivotal role in economic achievements, stating boldly, "We owe these achievements to General Secretary Xi Jinping, who is at the helm charting the course." This is indicative of a regime that is increasingly centering its narrative around a single leader rather than a collective governing body. The economic landscape in China is complex, with a stark divide between the thriving high-tech sector and the struggles faced by traditional industries. While macroeconomic indicators such as consumer sentiment paint a dire picture, certain companies like DeepSeek are finding ways to innovate and grow. This dichotomy was underscored by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi at a press conference where he proclaimed, "Where there is blockade there is breakthrough, where there is suppression there is innovation." It's clear that Beijing is banking on the technology sector to drive recovery despite overall economic headwinds. As the government announced the establishment of a high-tech state venture capital guidance fund and committed to sustained research and development spending. However, there was little indication of a shift toward supporting domestic consumption, which remains a critical issue. On the foreign policy front, Beijing is attempting to reposition itself in the global arena, particularly in light of the Trump administration's strongman tactics. The Chinese government is keen to portray itself as a more stable and benevolent partner in contrast to the perceived aggressiveness of the U.S. In a press conference, Wang Yi framed China as an advocate for multilateralism and a stabilizing force in an uncertain world, directly challenging U.S. policies. He stated those with stronger arms and bigger fists should not be allowed to call the shots, signaling that China aims to redefine its role on the global stage as one of cooperation rather than coercion. Despite these efforts, the NPC's work report revealed an unsettling trend regarding climate change. Since 2019, there has been a marked shift in policy that prioritizes coal as a stable energy source over cleaner alternatives. The report explicitly committed to increasing coal production, indicating that environmental goals are taking a backseat to energy security concerns. This move raises serious questions about China's commitment to combating climate change and its implications for global environmental efforts. Finally, the overarching narrative emerging from this year's sessions is one of continuity rather than change. Chinese leaders celebrated previous successes while outlining plans for 2025 that largely maintain the status quo, attributing challenges to external forces. This approach suggests a reluctance to adapt or reform, which could hinder economic recovery efforts and exacerbate tensions with international trade partners. With the Trump administration continuing to impose tariffs on Chinese imports, it appears that Beijing is firmly sticking to its state-managed economic strategies, viewing the U.S. as its most significant external political risk. As the dust settles on the two sessions, the implications of these developments will reverberate throughout China and beyond. The parties' focus on consolidating power, reliance on technological innovation, and an increasingly aggressive foreign policy stance indicate a significant period of transition for both the domestic landscape and China's role on the world stage. Looking forward, it will be crucial to monitor how these signals translate into concrete actions and whether they can effectively address the economic and social challenges facing the nation. China's economy is projected to demonstrate resilience in the face of renewed trade tensions with the United States as President Donald Trump commences a second trade war against Beijing. Despite these geopolitical challenges, early indicators suggest that the world's second-largest economy is poised for stability in the first quarter of 2025. According to forecasts from economists surveyed by Bloomberg, retail sales are expected to rise 3.8% and fixed asset investment should hold steady at 3.2%, mirroring last year's figures. This optimism is partly fueled by recent government initiatives, including a significant 300 billion renminbi $41.4 billion trade-in program aimed at stimulating consumer spending. We expect steady readings for major activity indicators for the first 2 months this year, stated Citigroup economists, highlighting a solid start to the year despite looming trade headwinds. Nonetheless, analysts remain cautious, questioning whether these stimulus measures will be sufficient to sustain domestic consumption over the long term. Industrial production, which has outpaced consumer growth in recent years, is projected to expand by 5.3% in January and February, although this marks a decrease from the 5.8% growth achieved in all of 2024. The slight dip is attributed to the Lunar New Year holiday, during which factory operations typically slow down. Notably, China's exports reached a record high of $540 billion in the first 2 months, driven by increased shipments to ASEAN countries and the European Union, suggesting that the export engine, which contributed nearly a third of the country's GDP growth last year, remains robust. However, challenges persist, particularly in the consumer sector. Retail sales growth, while showing an uptick from last year's 3.5%, fell short of the 5.5% growth experienced a year prior. Economists Chang Shu and David Chu from Bloomberg noted consumer spending was the weakest area, with retail sales slowing despite a lift from holiday-related demand over the Lunar New Year. The government's focus on boosting consumption was underscored during the National People's Congress, where leaders emphasized the need to invigorate domestic demand as a top priority for the first time since Xi Jinping took office. In a further indication of economic pressures, China experienced negative inflation in January and February for the first time since 2021, with imports dropping by 8.4%, signaling weak domestic demand. The collapse of the housing market has compounded these issues, creating deflationary pressures as home prices where many consumers hold their wealth continue to decline. Although government measures have begun to stabilize the housing sector, the long-term outlook remains uncertain. Meanwhile, the annual 2 sessions of the National People's Congress and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference reflected a commitment to maintaining Xi's strong leadership. Observers noted that while Beijing is betting on high-growth sectors such as technology to drive the economy forward, there remains a lack of concrete plans to address consumer spending directly. In a press conference, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi remarked, "Where there is blockade, there is breakthrough. Where there is suppression, there is innovation," indicating the government's reliance on technological advancements amid external pressures. As the trade war unfolds and economic challenges persist, China's leadership appears to be doubling down on its state-managed economic model, viewing the United States as a significant external risk. Analysts believe that unless there is a shift in strategy towards supporting consumer confidence, the ambitious growth target of 5% for 2025 may remain elusive. Looking ahead, the success of Beijing's initiatives to stimulate consumption and stabilize the economy will be critical in determining whether China can navigate the turbulent waters of international trade and domestic challenges. With the global economic landscape continuing to shift, future developments in China's economic policy will require careful observation as the nation seeks to chart a course through a complex and evolving geopolitical environment. In a critical moment for China's military reforms, President Xi Jinping faced significant challenges during the recent 2 sessions meetings held in Beijing. These annual gatherings, which encompass the National People's Congress and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, are pivotal for shaping China's legislative and policy direction. This year, however, they were marked by an atmosphere of heightened scrutiny and urgency, primarily due to ongoing corruption scandals within the People's Liberation Army (PLA) and the defense sector. For the first time, Xi publicly acknowledged the July 2023 investigations that led to the dismissal of numerous military and defense industry officials over corruption in military procurement and related disciplinary issues. The absence of several high-ranking generals and admirals from this year's meetings, presumably due to ongoing investigations, underscored the depth of the crisis facing Xi's military reforms. The number of PLA attendees noticeably declined, with many representatives coming from frontline units rather than the upper echelons, suggesting a growing mistrust of the information provided by senior military officials. In his speech, Xi reiterated the importance of enhancing military efficiency, strengthening cross-unit coordination, and refining management systems, all part of his broader strategy known as military-civil fusion development. This approach emphasizes the integration of military and civilian sectors to address systemic inefficiencies and corruption that have plagued the PLA for years. He called for the urgent need to resolve bottlenecks and choke points that hinder the military's modernization efforts, reflecting a continuity in rhetoric since his previous addresses in 2019. Xi's emphasis on military coordination echoes previous themes from his tenure. Since 2013 he has presided over numerous meetings with military representatives, but the pressing nature of this year's discussions suggests that challenges within the PLA have not improved, rather they have intensified. The recurring terms in his speeches, such as cross-departmental and corruption, illustrate a persistent struggle to achieve the integration necessary for effective military operations and modernization. The shift in focus to include more frontline personnel in discussions also signals Xi's possible skepticism about the information filtering out from high-ranking officials. By engaging those directly involved in military operations and logistics, Xi aims to gain a clearer picture of the realities on the ground, perhaps hoping to circumvent the biases and incomplete information that may have characterized prior communications from the upper echelons. Despite these efforts, the entrenched interests and bureaucratic inefficiencies inherent in the Chinese political system pose significant obstacles to Xi's reform agenda. The Taoquai system, which creates a complex web of vertical and horizontal authority across government and military sectors, complicates policy coordination and implementation. Xi's push for an integrated national strategic system is an attempt to dismantle these barriers. Yet his past initiatives have not yielded the desired results. Looking ahead, the success of Xi's military reforms remains uncertain. While this year's two sessions meetings showcased a more hands-on approach to military reform, the persistent corruption scandals and the entrenched interests within the PLA could undermine these efforts. The critical question remains whether Xi can effectively dismantle the networks that resist change and foster a more integrated and efficient military structure. As these developments unfold, they will undoubtedly have significant implications for China's military posture and broader geopolitical dynamics in the region. As Xi continues to navigate these challenges, the international community will be watching closely, especially given the potential ramifications for China's military modernization and its implications for regional and global security. In a dynamic press conference held on March 7, 2025, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi addressed a range of pressing international issues while outlining the direction of China's foreign policy. This event, part of the National People's Congress, highlighted the evolution of China's diplomatic strategies amid a rapidly changing global landscape marked by geopolitical tensions and economic uncertainties. Wang opened the discussion by underscoring the transformative developments in China's diplomacy under the leadership of President Xi Jinping. He expressed optimism about the past year's achievements in state diplomacy, emphasizing significant events such as the 70th anniversary of the Five Principles of Peaceful Coexistence and the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. These diplomatic engagements have set a new benchmark for Global South collaboration, he stated, noting that President Xi's interactions with over 130 foreign dignitaries have fostered a narrative of friendship and cooperation. Looking ahead to 2025, Wang announced key diplomatic milestones, including the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Second World War and the upcoming Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. He elaborated on the importance of these events in solidifying China's stature on the world stage, asserting this year will witness new highlights in our diplomacy, contributing to a shared future for mankind. Discussion turned to the strategic partnership between China and Russia, particularly in light of heightened interactions between Chinese and Russian leaders. Wang Yi reaffirmed the resilience of this relationship despite external pressures, noting the historical logic of China-Russia friendship remains unchanged. He articulated a vision of cooperation characterized by non-alignment and mutual benefit, emphasizing that the matured China-Russia partnership serves as a stabilizing factor in a tumultuous world. Responding to a query about the increasingly complex global landscape, particularly regarding U.S.-China relations, Wang articulated China's commitment to maintaining stability. He remarked Chinese diplomacy will steadfastly stand on the right side of history, stabilizing the uncertain world with China's certainty. He underscored that China remains open to cooperation while firmly defending its national interests against any form of aggression. As the conversation shifted to the role of the Global South, Wang highlighted the growing influence of developing nations in the international arena. He pointed out that these countries now contribute significantly to global economic growth and are vital in shaping a more equitable international order. We must unite to safeguard our interests and enhance our representation in global governance, he urged, advocating for a collective approach to development. Wang Yi also addressed pressing geopolitical challenges, including the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East. He reiterated China's advocacy for dialogue and negotiation as the path to peace, stating, "There are no winners in conflict and there are no losers in peace." He affirmed China's willingness to play a constructive role in promoting a peaceful resolution to the Ukrainian crisis, emphasizing that the security of one nation should not come at the cost of another. Finally, Wang responded to concerns regarding the implications of the US-China technological rivalry, particularly in the field of artificial intelligence. He asserted that innovation should not be a tool for division but a shared resource for global development. "We are willing to share the fruits of innovation with all countries chasing the stars and the sea together," he declared, reinforcing China's commitment to collaborative technological advancement. In conclusion, Wang Yi's remarks encapsulate a strategic vision for China's role in shaping global affairs amid rising geopolitical tensions. As the world grapples with uncertainty, China's approach appears focused on diplomacy, cooperation, and a commitment to multilateralism. The upcoming year is set to be pivotal, with significant events on the horizon that may redefine international relations and reinforce the dynamics of global power. The question remains whether these diplomatic efforts will yield the desired stability or further complicate the intricate web of international politics.